Chapter 26, February 20th, 1943. Road to Skierniewice. The first rule of the resistance was loyalty to the resistance. We all made vows that under no condition would we reveal the name of our leaders or fellow fighters, or even our missions, not under threat of torture or death, to us or to our loved ones. I gave my promise without hesitation, because I understood the reason it had to exist. The resistance was bigger than any of us individually. Not even our leaders could consider themselves important enough to betray the others. The second rule of the resistance was that if we could save ourselves without breaking the first rule, we should. That thought forced me out of the storage bin, hoisting Esther's bag across one shoulder and the German knapsack slung over the other. That left my hands free to open the loft door, now my only option for escape. Flames licked at the floorboards beneath me. I felt through my boots how hot they were already getting. It was likely only seconds before the upper floor collapsed. The rope dangled from a hook at the Widow's Peak a little over a meter away. With twice the usual weight on my back, I didn't dare lean out to grab it. I had to jump. Smoke filled the loft and poured out the doors around me, choking me, blinding me. A piece of the floor behind me collapsed, taking part of the barn wall with it. There was no time to think of a plan. I got a running start and leapt for the rope. I caught it, though the weight of my bag nearly made me fall, and rope burns stung my hands. I dropped the knapsack to lighten my load, and then shinnied down as quickly as possible. It's a good thing I did, because when I was nearly to the ground, the rope itself caught fire and landed in a heap beside me. The Gestapo officers were gone, but very soon the farmers along this road would be waking up for their morning chores. They'd see the smoke and flames and come here to investigate. I needed to go now. I did my best to balance the weight of the bags on my back, but I hadn't realized before that even though I had the weapons and ammunition, Esther's bag was as heavy as mine, since it was much larger than the knapsack. That thought immediately stuck in my head. For all my feelings of annoyance, Esther was carrying the same weight as me, and yet she almost never complained. She would have been as cold as me, as tired as me, but she kept pace at my side without fail. I had to get her back. I had no idea how to get her back. The tracks from the Gestapo truck were still visible, and should remain that way as long as it stayed on these dirt roads. But if the truck reached a main road paved and cleared of snow, I'd never find Esther. Then the realization hit. The woman with the eggs who we had met 2 days ago. She must have reported us to that officer in Lodz, who sent out word for the Gestapo to look for us. I wonder if the day would ever come when we would realize that what she had done. If she would ever know the price Esther was about to pay for that woman's bigotry. Esther was unconscious when they carried her to the truck, or I thought she was. I hoped she'd remained that way for some time. They wouldn't do anything to her until she was awake. Did she know that? Would she think to fake sleep if she did wake up? I needed to keep myself awake. We couldn't have slept for more than an hour or two since we first entered the barn. I was exhausted, moving as quickly as I could to follow the tire tracks, and wearing out even faster with the bag on my shoulders. They seemed to get heavier with each step. Inside my head, a voice whispered to drop the bags, but I couldn't allow myself to do that. Whether I found Esther or not, I still had to go to Warsaw. That thought burrowed inside me, a new weight that proved heavier than 10 bags combined. If I couldn't find Esther, there would come a point when I would have to refocus on the mission and get to Warsaw. I didn't think I'd be capable of that, never knowing what happened to Yitzhak had hollowed out my parents' lives, mine too in many ways. I couldn't wonder about Esther too. I would not leave without her. As I feared, after about 10 kilometers the truck turned onto a main road and the tracks quickly faded. No, this wasn't good. What was happening to Esther now? I knew too many of the possibilities, each one worse than the last. I had to think. I had to control my scattered emotions and just think. My options on the main road were to go left toward Warsaw or right. If they were taking her to Warsaw, I'd never see her again. If the truck went right, I had a chance. I walked to the right, solely because I needed the truck to have turned that way. I knew that was foolish reasoning, but I had nothing else left. Eventually a small town rose ahead, but I couldn't find a sign to tell me its name. I'd never been here. I wasn't aware of any ghettos nearby. Likely any Jews who'd once lived here were deported to larger cities long ago. I noticed a small military presence, perhaps a single company of soldiers, but nothing that would ordinarily concern me. However, this was hardly an ordinary time for me, starting with the German knapsack and ending with Esthers Oversteps shoulder bag, both of which practically screamed for me to be stopped and searched. I couldn't carry these through town, so before entering, I cleared a spot of snow in the field and put both bags on the ground. Then I rolled enough snow to create a base for the base of a wide snowman. I added a snowball trunk and head and even put 2 pebbles in place for eyes. It cost me a half hour to build it, but if it worked, it was time well spent. Unless it became the reason I never found Esther. Maybe she was only a half hour farther from here by now. Keeping hold of my last vestiges of hope, I walked on, trying my best to fit in, trying to look like I wasn't in a full-fledged panic over what could be happening to Esther right now, if she was even still alive. The Gestapo frequently took over local jails for its own use, and jails were often located in the center of a small town like this, and that was the direction I took. I saw soldiers here and there, but the townspeople were going about their business, so I did too. I knew this routine. I'd done it hundreds of times. But it had never felt like this before, like I was a walking advertisement for the resistance movement. Every step I took, every turn of my head, every false smile seemed to scream my true identity. I had to stay calm. I had to do better than this, for Esther's sake, for my own sake. Several Nazi quibble wagons were parked all over the city, but I was looking for a truck, and I began to notice how many of them were here too. How could I know which one carried her away? I couldn't know. Even if I'd seen it, they all looked the same. Something in German. It took a moment to realize the young soldier was speaking to me, telling me his heart is mine. If only he knew how literally I believed that. I turned and offered a brief wave, nothing flirtatious, but friendly enough for him to let me pass without thinking I was interested. But it didn't work this time. He ordered me to stop, and I did, immediately readying my papers for his inspection. "You don't need those," he said, brushing them away. "What's your name?" "Helena Nowak." "I haven't seen you here before." My smile was tepid, and I began walking again, thoroughly bothered that he followed alongside. "I don't leave home very often." "Well, I'm glad you left it today. I've just finished with my duties." How nice for him. "Perhaps we can get a coffee together, no?" "No, still walking," I said. "I've got some shopping to do. Then I'm expected back at home to help with chores." "I can walk you to the shops. I'll be good company." On a normal day, I could get rid of this boy like he was dust to be wiped from a shelf. But I was exhausted, cold from being out in the wintry weather for so many days, and increasingly worried about Esther. I was also out of excuses. All I could think of to say was, I was headed to the town square. He took that as permission to come along, and fell in beside me, thinking he'd set himself up for some kind of date. Later in his barrack, he'd bragged to his bunk mates about the pretty Polish girl who liked him. If only he knew. I started out at the bottom, but I'm working hard to get noticed. I might be a soldat today, but one day I'll lead this army. You and Hitler together. I smiled sideways at him, mostly at the idea of his ignorant schlump aspiring to lead anything more complicated than a line of school children out to play. Perhaps my joke was lost in translation because he only nodded. Perhaps not today, but watch me tomorrow and the day after that. You'll see. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be here tomorrow. By then, I'd have to be as far from this place as possible, with or without Esther. I couldn't leave without her. I might not have to leave without Esther. My breath became shallow, but I tried to force that away before he noticed. What are your duties? I didn't care how he answered, but as always, the conversation needed to be about him, not me. If a report comes in about a person in hiding, a Jew or gypsy or partisan, perhaps I'm part of the team to go and find them. You're with the Gestapo? My heart pounded, but I couldn't let my sudden interest in his work show. I casually threw out a hand and hoped he didn't notice the sweat on my palm. There can't be many places to hide around here. You'd be surprised. Just last night we found a Jewish girl who'd been hiding in a barn. Tiny little thing, near your age, I'd guess. Just a scared kitten. We were all surprised she'd managed to hide this long. It occurred to me that the woman who reported us surely had mentioned 2 girls, one with my description. If she had told them that I was Polish, hopefully the Gestapo wouldn't be as interested in finding me. Or maybe this ambitious young man suspected that I was the second girl and was hoping to trap me. Swallowing the new wave of panic, I asked, "What happens to those you find?" He pointed to a building down the street. "We keep them there until we can ship them to a labor camp. But you're in no danger. The cells are well guarded." My gut twisted. Of course they were. How could I possibly get Esther out? He continued, "We need to make an exception for the girl from last night, though. She claims to have typhus, so we couldn't keep her in the cell with the others." "Oh?" It was nearly impossible to hide the concern in my voice. What was done with her? "For now we've got her tied up in the back like a dog." He chuckled until he realized I was not. "We'll bring a doctor in from the town to examine her. If she's only pretending to be sick, then we'll return her for questioning." Questioning? Why? My superiors believe she knows more than she's telling. Why else would she refuse to give us any information, even her name? And if she is sick? He shrugged again. "Obviously, we can't allow disease to spread. You understand, I'm sure." I did understand. One way or another, Esther was going to be killed. Chapter 27, February 20th, 1943. Speer Winsky. I got rid of the young soldier only when I ducked into a shop that sold women's undergarments, explaining I was shopping for my mother. His face turned 100 shades of red. "I may be in here for some time," I explained, "but perhaps I'll see you tomorrow, or the day after that, or when it rains pigs." He promised to watch for me, and I definitely watched him from the corner shop window until I was sure he was gone. I asked the store clerk for directions to find the town doctor, and then hurried that way.